Have you ever been so depressed or so sad that all you've ever wanted to do is just eat, just stuff it down, numb yourself with food, or perhaps even the opposite, not eat at all? I'm Bethany Perry. When my brother died, Joel was his name, he died in 2011, which seems like a long time to still be crying about it, but we were really close, and he was a wonderful, wonderful man. So when he died and I moved back to Michigan from Nova Scotia, and my granddaughter was going to be born. I had a lot to deal with to help my mom and to get my tenant out of my condo, and it was a nightmare. There were many nightmares involved. And instead of thinking with my prefrontal cortex, I wasn't able to do that because I was in a trauma state. When any of us are in a trauma state, we think with our reptilian brain or our lower brain. And our autonomic nervous system goes on our fight or flight, which is also freeze or surrender. And without getting into a whole lot more neuroscience and the polyvagal system and all of that, which I absolutely love and believe that knowing this information is something that can help you when you're in those places. But what happened for me is I wasn't able to make a good decision. I took a job instead of launching my own career. I took a job that required me to, they told me my territory was in sales, was going to be 15, max 20 minutes from my home. And it ended up being an hour to an hour and a half from my home. And I was working with people I needed to meet with who worked 3 shifts. So sometimes I was only home for 4 hours. My poor dogs and my poor body. Because when you're on the road, what do you eat? There is nothing else to eat. In 4 hours, do I have time to cook for myself? Do I have time to care for myself? Do I have time to love myself? No, but that drive. So if I wasn't stuffing food, I was driving so hard to run. I was running from my pain, from the pain of losing my brother. I ate Taco Bell often. I ate Wendy's often. I'm not even a meat eater for the most part. I don't tell people whether they should or shouldn't eat meat, just in case you want to know. I think it's really individual what you want to choose for your body and what does your body need, which is a big piece of my philosophy and something that my brother and I used to talk about a lot when he was struggling with his weight. Because as many diets as there are out there, the people who come to me is when they're confused, they're lost. They've tried every diet out there and one works and then it stops working. And so what do you do with that? And my question is why do we think anyone could possibly tell us what we should eat? So I suppose that's the stubborn piece of me. My mom would certainly agree with that. But how does anybody out there know what my body needs? Now, sure, we can look at a generalities of vitamins and nutrients and and minerals, all of that. But I don't know. Your body may respond terribly to tomatoes or potatoes, and my body may say yes. There's a reason for taste buds. Some of it is so that we get to enjoy food, and some of it is so that others, that we can learn to eat what we love. And typically, not always, has to do with what our body needs. But that's a segue. You see, I still run from the pain of losing my brother. And I wonder what you might be running from today, and what you might be shoving in your mouth, or not shoving in your mouth, not eating at all. After a time of that, I ended up having a stroke. I look at it as a stress stroke. I was under so much stress. I had tens of thousands of dollars of damage to my condo when I moved back in. I didn't have a job really. I was running to create a job. And yet, just before I had the stroke, I had decided that I was going to go to the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, because I thought, well, I'll use my life coaching and I'll add health coaching, because the two blend together so beautifully. And I didn't even know how well that they would blend together so beautifully until I brought it in. And on Mother's Day, I wasn't feeling right. It was obviously a Sunday. And then 2 days later, I was like the earth was moving. Blood sugar, I didn't know. And I went to work and I was interviewing people for, it was part of my job is to start interviewing people. And during the interviews, the president of the company was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I just feel weird. I don't feel right." And so he sent me home and I got lost. I couldn't find my way home. I was so confused. My son happened to call me. He's a physician. And he's like, "Mom, where are you?" And I'm like, I don't know. I'm at a gas station. And I'm sure I sounded just as confused as I was, perhaps probably a lot more. And it was my son who convinced me. I think it took about 2 hours, which should have taken 40 minutes for me to figure out how to get home. And all I wanted to do was come home and go to sleep. I just wanted to be with my dogs and go to sleep. And likely, if I would have done that and my son wouldn't have been calling me, I may not be here. And when you discover later, after the fact, that you're still here, there's a reason I'm here. I ended up, the hospital's super close. I ended up at the hospital. I remember when they told me I was having a stroke, or I had a stroke. It's the one thing I remember. I had a girlfriend with me. I don't even know how she got there. I have no clue. I looked at the doctor. I said, "That's impossible. I'm healthy. I'm a yoga teacher. I eat healthy." Though the last 6 months I had eaten like, I'd eaten like shit. Sorry. But then when, like, I just thought, okay, fine. I just want to go home now. Okay, can I just go home? And the doctor said, "No, you can't go home." I'll never forget. That's when it became real, and I started to cry. I thought, okay, I want to go home. Like, I've never been hospitalized except to have a baby. What are you talking about? I can't go home. I'm fine. Long story short, perhaps, as I was in the hospital, one of the things that I had learned from my neuroscience life coaching course, see, the things in our life that we can use now. There was a book I read called The Stroke of Insight. And the other things that Dr. Amanda Wintink had taught us in class, I knew that if I was going to get my brain back, I needed to start visualizing. I needed to start studying. I needed to start using the parts of my brain that I still had, instead of falling down that slippery slope of depression and sadness, which is pretty common and typical. And why wouldn't you go there if you had a stroke when you're 54, I think? I had signed up for IIN, Institute of Integrative Nutrition, and I started studying in the hospital. And I never stopped. And that following fall, because it was in May, and that following September, I opened my coaching business. Nobody could believe that I had a stroke then, and my mind was not all together. I clearly wasn't who I am now, but I did start my business. So I was able to take that little girl in me that wanted to love people and feed people and help people to read, maybe read what they needed to read things or hear things that weren't common, helping them to understand that you are an individual and there's no one like you, and that everything that's ever happened in your life, all the amazing things you've learned and studied and lived, and all the hardest of things, the place that took you into the depths of your soul of darkness, they're here to teach you, to reach you, and when you're stuck in them, I'm here to help you. I want to help you. I didn't do it by myself, but I am here, and I am healthy, and I have so much that I want to offer you based on all the things that have come together from what I have learned and what's happened to me. More on that next. This is Bethany Perry with BethanyPerry.com.